Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I am talking about the Nikon Z7 with the FTZ adapter. Now, this review is going to be more like an initial review. I really did not get a chance to use this camera for a long time. I only had it for a few days, and also I did not get a chance to get my hands on the native Z-mount lenses. So really, we're taking this from an FTZ adapter review because, like I said, I did not get my hands on the native lenses. We're going to be looking at the good things about this camera. We're going to be looking at the bad things about this camera, and hopefully if you're looking at buying one of these Z cameras, hopefully this review will help you choose which one you are going to buy. So let's get right into this review by talking about the good things about the Nikon Z7. So this camera, the Nikon Z7, is Nikon's first full-frame mirrorless camera. It is a 45.7 megapixel sensor. It's basically being deemed as the mirrorless version of the Nikon D850, and rightfully so in many cases. One good thing that I would like to report on is that the AF, the autofocus in this camera, is actually really good. It's not the best autofocus, but I think overall it was relatively accurate right out of the box, especially with the native f-mount lenses that you're adapting to this camera. I used multiple different forms of the autofocus. I used regular single point, I used AFC single point, and I also used face tracking because for me as a portrait photographer, it's important to have, you know, the Sony has IAF and the new Canon sort of has an IAF thing. Nikon only has the face tracking. So I wanted to see how well that actually worked. So that was important to me. The single point was really good. Really accurate overall, even when I was shooting with faster lenses like 1.4 lenses and all of that. So I was very happy with how that performed. The AFC on single point also performed relatively well. It would miss occasionally, but that's kind of expected with most cameras, just depending on what lens and other things you're using when you're tracking subjects. And now, as far as the accuracy with face tracking, I was slightly disappointed because I did something where I had my friend move towards me, and unfortunately, it kind of missed half of the images. So it was like a 50% hit rate, but I will say that, I did have a fast lens on it, like a 1.485 is what I was using, and the autofocus system in that lens is not very quick. It's rather slow, and especially shooting at 1.4, it may be rather difficult to get sharp focus overall, but the Sony did it very well. In fact, it never missed a single one when I did the same test with it. So take that into mind. The next thing I want to talk about is the ISO and the image quality output. Both awesome. Okay, the ISO performance is really good. I would say it's pretty much on par with the Nikon D850. And in fact, if you want to see that performance comparison, I have a link in the description below where you can check out RAWs from the Nikon D850 and the Nikon Z7 and compare them. But I would say it's pretty much what you would expect from a 45 megapixel sensor from Nikon. So it's really good. For me, one of the biggest advantages to the Nikon Z7 is the IBVR. It's the in-body vibration reduction system. So basically, the sensor is on like a gimbal. It's a 5-axis stabilization. And of course, you only get 5-axis if you use the native Z-mount lenses, but if you use the FTZ adapter with f-mount lenses, you get a 3-axis stabilization, and it worked really, really well. It was so refreshing to use my 85mm or even my Sigma 50mm and see how smooth it was in the viewfinder. It's honestly some of the best VR, in my opinion, that I've seen in any form of Nikon camera or lens. So I'm just really, really impressed with the in-body vibration reduction in this camera. Another great thing that I think a lot of Nikon users have been waiting for a long time is good video performance from a Nikon camera, which includes good autofocus in video mode. So this Nikon camera, it does a lot of things. It does 4K up to 30 frames, okay? You can use the IBVR, like I said, with the FTZ adapter, or you get the 5-axis with the native Z-mount lenses. And as I just said, the AF, the autofocus, is majorly improved with this phase detection autofocus system. Here's an example up on your screen. I'll show you a few examples, ones with the 50, the Sigma 50 mil and the 85 mil, and also the 28 millimeter 1.4, all of which performed nearly flawlessly on this thing. So I'm really, really satisfied with how the autofocus racks in and out. It's sort of like a dual pixel autofocus experience with a Nikon camera, so that's very nice. One more notable thing to mention with the video is that you do have 10-bit 422 output with N-Log. This is the first time in any Nikon camera that we have had 10-bit 422 output with a log profile, period. We've never had a log profile in a Nikon camera. Unfortunately, it is only output, as I said, so you will have to have an external recorder, but if you already have an external recorder, then congratulations, now you can have a log profile for more dynamic range and color grading when you go into post. Another thing I want to highlight with the Nikon Z7 is the EVF. Now, people weren't kidding when they said it was a beautiful EVF, and in fact, I liked it more than the Sony a7 III. Now, is it really that much better than the Sony a7 III? Not really, but I did really enjoy looking through this EVF. It was sharp, it was clear, and like I said, it was just fun to shoot with overall. One benefit of all mirrorless cameras is that you can review your images inside the viewfinder. This is huge because let's say you're outside, sunny day, you're taking some pictures, and it's hard to see what your image looks like when you're trying to check for critical sharpness. It's hard to see that if it's like super sunny outside. So looking through the viewfinder is so much better, and it gives you a much more, in my opinion, accurate representation of what the image looks like. So third-party lenses with the Nikon Z7. Okay, like I said, we have the FTZ adapter, and so I did a video, actually, if you want to check in the card, you can see more on this, but I use a Sigma lens, my 50 mil, and my Tamron lens, the 35 millimeter 1.8, and the Sigma worked really well. Autofocus, in video, in photo, whatever, it worked very, very well. The Tamron, however, did not work with autofocus. It did work when you actually used manual focus, but not in autofocus mode. Now, do take that with a grain of salt. That does not mean that all Sigma lenses will work or all Tamron lenses won't. It just means that that specific one didn't work. And I believe as of a few days ago, Nikon released an update, at least for Sigma lenses. Hopefully we'll see the same for Tamron lenses. The final thing I want to talk about when it comes to the good things about the Nikon Z7 is the ergonomics. Now, I kind of measured the grip size of the D850 compared to the Z7, and as far as deepness goes, it was about the same. Maybe the Z7 was off by like half an inch or whatever, but it was honestly one of the best ergonomic feels of any mirrorless camera I've held so far. You do have lack of the buttons on the left-hand side, like the D850 has all the buttons on the left-hand side, which has now been moved into a digital menu on the camera, which is not so bad once you get used to it, so don't worry too much about that. But I will say, as far as ergonomics, there is one bad thing, and that's where the magnification buttons are positioned. I actually don't like where they're positioned because when I'm trying to, say, review a picture in the viewfinder, it's hard to actually zoom in or zoom out because they're like right by your face and you're trying to, look through the viewfinder clearly and zoom in. Of course, you can use one of the function buttons on the front of the camera to do a one-to-one zoom in. Just by pressing that, it'll zoom in. So that's what I did. But yeah, if you're looking through the viewfinder, it's not an easy thing to zoom in. At least in my experience, it was not. Now that I talked about the good things about the Nikon Z7, I want to kind of discuss some of the bad things about this camera. Now, I would say that the Nikon Z7 is probably one of the most controversial full-frame mirrorless cameras that have been released to date, okay? There's been a lot of mixed emotion on this new Nikon camera. The first thing I want to talk about is the elephant in the room, right? The one card slot. Now, for me personally, it is not really an issue. I don't shoot redundantly or, overflow necessarily because of portrait photography. But if you shoot weddings or anything like that where you want to shoot redundantly and you want to have a backup of all your images, this could definitely be a major problem for you. Do I think Nikon should have put 2 card slots in this camera? Absolutely. But on the bright side, it does have an XQD card in it, which is the faster card of the 2 between an SD and an XQD. So that is one thing, but overall, 1 card slot, not really good for everybody. No battery grip. This camera does not have the potential for a battery grip. Now, I'm not talking about a battery pack. There is supposedly a battery pack in development that will hold 2 batteries in it. But what I mean by grip is that the camera will not be able to take photos vertically from this battery pack, okay? I guess it does not have the right connectors on the bottom of it to do that. So I personally like a battery grip on my camera. So this really is a bad thing, not only for me, but for people who also like to shoot vertically with a battery grip. So sorry, no battery grip. The next thing I want to talk about is battery life. Now, I've seen a lot of mixed reports on this. Some people say they're getting up to like 1,600 to 2,000 shots on a single battery charge, and others who are saying they're getting below the rating for the battery in terms of shots. I personally got 350 shots, but I will say there are some caveats to this. Number one, I was not shooting consistently with the camera. In other words, I would turn it on, shoot, let's say 100 shots and turn it off or whatever. It did last over 4 days with doing that like I was doing, but the thing is, I only got 350 shots. So I'm not denying or saying that you can't get, over 1,000 shots with this camera. I'm just saying in my personal experience, I only got 350, and that could be very well based on the caveats I just mentioned. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the silent shutter. And many of you are probably wondering, why the heck is this in the disadvantage section? Well, technically it can be an advantage if you're in the correct lighting situation. So basically, here's the thing. When I use the silent shutter, my situation was flickering fluorescent lights, okay? And so every time I took a picture with the silent shutter, you saw the little bands going across the frame. So it can be a good thing if you're in correct lighting situation, but if you're constantly shooting in those situations, like say a wedding, I shot a wedding in a gym that had those flickering lights, silent shutter is not gonna be your friend. So anyway, if it works in the correct lighting situation, it's awesome. But if you're in bad lighting situation with flickering lights, it's a no-go. Anyways, guys, I hope this review helped you out. I hope that you've learned some new things about this camera. And if you're interested in buying it, there is a link in the description below. If you buy from it, it helps the channel. So please consider doing that. Guys, thanks for watching. And as always, stay tuned to this channel for more videos like this. And remember to like and subscribe. Have a great day. Belingle out.